So I once did a post talking about interview biases. So these are the biases that exist amongst interviewers whenever they're interviewing candidates for a particular position. Okay, so the type of bias that I'm gonna talk about now is the contrast bias. So in my other video I spoke about 7 biases that exist amongst interviewers. Okay, and then they end up picking a applicant or a candidate that is not suitable for the position because of the biases that exist amongst them. Okay, amongst them meaning the interviewers. So in this instance, it's the contrast bias that made AD pick the wrong candidate or the wrong applicant. Because if you really think about the Love is Blind scene, when they're in their pods, they're essentially interviewing each other. People are interviewing potential husbands, potential wives for their lives. Okay, before I was rudely interrupted. So yeah, that's what actually takes place in the pods. So what happened in this scenario that I want to talk about is that AD fell for the contrast bias, where she compared the candidates or the applicants amongst themselves instead of comparing the applicants against the job spec. Okay, against the job spec meaning the spec that she has for herself of what she's looking for when it comes to a husband. So she compared Matthew and Clay, both of which were not good for her. Okay, and then she assumed, or according to her, Clay was better than Matthew, and then Clay was the better pick because according to her, Clay was better than Matthew. But essentially there was nothing wrong with her rejecting both of them, because both of them, they don't meet her spec. Okay, so let's take it back to the recruitment HR space. So what would happen in the recruitment HR space is that you would advertise a position, call the applicants in for interviews, and then if none of the applicants meet the job spec, you would decline, regret all of them, and then re-advertise the position again. Because I'm sure some of us have seen a position, say maybe you apply for a position, you get interviewed, and then you get declined, and then 2 months later maybe you see the same position advertised and you ask yourself, what happened to the applicant? Did they only work for 2 months and then they resigned? Why are they advertising the position again? But you would find that maybe the panel or the interviewer did not fall for what we call the contrast bias, or any of the biases that exist amongst interviewers. So instead of, let's say maybe they interviewed 10 applicants and let's say all 10 of them did not meet the spec, maybe what the recruiter likely would have done is that they declined all 10 and then re-advertised the position instead of taking the best one out of the 10, comparing the 10 amongst each other instead of comparing the 10 to the job spec. So what should have happened in this case, in my opinion, I know it's easier when you are standing in the grandstand to say they should have passed the ball this way, they should have done this, they should have done that, but what ideally should have happened in this situation, AD could have, should have, would have said that Matthew is not good for me, Clay is not good for me, let's go back to the drawing board, let us re-advertise the position. Because even in the beginning she said for herself that Clay looks like the kind of person that she has been going for all these years, and all the time these kind of people have not been good for her.